Hi, this is Bob Papa, voice of the New York Football Giants, and this is the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast.
Welcome back, Giants fans, to this bonus edition of the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast, proudly in association with Andy's Man Club. Lads, remember, it is okay to talk. This time we are 100% British, but as always, we are 100% Giants. It's Dan, producer Craig, and for the first time, what seems like forever, our mate Shane joins us this evening, bringing you this audio-only special as we're here to chat about the first episode of Hard Knocks Offseason, which aired on Tuesday night. Excited for this one. Lads, how are we doing?
Yeah, not bad. I feel like I remember a few months ago, Dan had already been on the episode, and he come back and he was we joked that he was a bit of a guest, and now I feel like the guest. It's sort of done a round table. I'm quite glad it's audio only, to be honest with you. Like I said to you guys before, I've had 1 hour, less than an hour sleeping, 34 hours, and I'm about 7 or 8 beers in here in Germany. So the fact that the listeners can't see me is probably for a good thing.
It's like our roving Euro reporter, isn't it? Live from Germany.
Oh, Ray Solokov, is it, or something like that? Off Sky Sports News.
Love it.
Yeah, no, it should be good. Looking forward to talking about this. It's been a long time coming, and it was impossible to get hold of, and somehow we managed to do it. But yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Yeah, it was very difficult to get hold of. Obviously, not hearing anything from the official channels, so we've had to go a little bit rogue, but we've all watched it, and we're here to bring you our thoughts as well. We've also asked some of our followers for their thoughts on it. Obviously, as we're not live, so there's not going to be any sort of viewer comments this evening. We're going to get straight into it, though. Finally, after waiting to what seems like forever, we finally saw Big Blue on Hard Knocks. And I don't know about you boys, but with that intro music, it just gave chills down my spine. It was a beautiful moment. Shane, there was plenty of discussions around running backs in the D line. Tell us some more.
Yeah, definitely. So, kind of one of the main part of the episodes was from inside the war room, which look, I thought this was quite cool to see that. Like, I don't know if I'm being a bit naive or stupid here, but the war room isn't just used for draft. Look, I don't know why. I just presumed it was only really used for drafts. So it was interesting to see that, okay, they get this thing prepared, but they actually talk about free agents and have general chit-chats, etc., which, is just something I was completely unaware that did. But, within that war room, we've seen the Giants brass discuss in depth the running back and defensive tackle positions. Running back conversations, that players that came up was Barkley, Zach Moss, Pollard, Josh Jacobs, and Singletary, who obviously we went on to sign, and we'll probably talk about later on in a little bit more detail. Defensive tackles wise, the first one that was kind of mentioned was Chris Jones, and people can take this however they want to say, however I say this, but you could say some Giants brass kind of got a little bit excited at the thought of having Chris Jones paired with Sexy Dexy in the middle and giving that pressure up front. But the Giants were aware that it was kind of at their price range, and I thought it was interesting to see that Sexy Dexy had been sort of vouching for Christian Wilkins potentially, who was unfortunately dismissed by Giants Director of Pro Scouting Chris Rossetti, as he didn't think he would be a difference maker on third down.
Yeah, I thought that was quite an interesting sort of point that he made about Wilkins. I think I like him as a D lineman. I think he's one of sort of he's in that sort of top 10, top 15 D lineman in the league, I think. But it was quite interesting to hear their thoughts on him, and the fact that he's obviously best mates with Sexy Dexy as well. It'd been like having those two on the D line would have been quite a interesting prospect. But yeah, like you said, Shane, it was kind of interesting to see like them all in that war room, but not during the draft as well. It's almost like a conference room as well, isn't it? So it was the discussions they were having were some really sort of good ones, and obviously Brian Burns was on their sort of hit list straight away as well, which is interesting to see that they've obviously been targeting him for a little while. But what do you reckon of that, Craig?
I don't know about you guys, but one thing that I found really interesting was obviously myself and Kev did the Fix the Giants episode a few months ago, and it got to a point where we were kind of dismissing players quite quickly because of just because of the fact that they were out of the price range or unrealistic and stuff like that. And I just thought it was really interesting to see the Giants sort of front office talk about every player. Like, they look at every single player, and I don't know what it was that just surprised me. I didn't expect them to kind of go through every permutation, and I guess it's just in case they were able to trade for anyone, or just in case a bit of money did free up. But I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I just thought it was really interesting that they literally look at every single player and how it would fit and how they would fit with the Giants.
Shane?
Yeah, so I was just making sure I weren't on mute. Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, kind of, you know, you can't. We're in that first little segment. You kind of got an idea into what they were looking to do and to kind of to build, kind of thing. I mean, I will say I spoke to a couple of my mates about this, and I said, like, I personally thought maybe for the first episode it might be a little bit too slow if you're not a Giants fan. Excuse me. I think if you're a Giants fan, it's everything you want and more, essentially. But I think if you're like you know, you're a Titans fan, Texans fan, a Raiders fan, it might be a little bit slow going, but, you know, like I say, it was just interesting sort of seeing it straight off the bat, kind of the conversations that they were having and kind of the players that they were identifying early on in the process.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not necessarily surprised that they talk about every player, but because kind of like at the end of the season, obviously you need to evaluate and sort of reevaluate and look at everything. But it was great to see that they were literally going through the list of every single player they had on that roster, and it was, you know, just to hear the way they talk about you know some of the players as well was really sort of quite eye opening as well. It was really cool. I thought that
it was like due diligence.
Yeah. And props to the graphics department at NFL Films, because the graphics they were bringing up for those players were really cool as well. Like, really kind of added an extra layer to it, so you could understand like who the player was, kind of, you know, the ballpark money numbers and everything like that. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. And I guess if we kind of naturally move on to the next point, which was inside that same kind of room, was Shane Bowen, and the introduction of him. He got a significant amount of time kind of pitching what his defense would look at, what he likes. I'm not too sure about the clearly scripted, shush, let's shut the door, let's I'm going to offer Shane the job. Like, you know, Dable obviously had those stats there on his little phone ready to read out about everything. And don't get me wrong, they're impressive stats, but, you know, that screams segue into the next segment to me. But you know, Bowen emphasised the strong need for an organic pass rush, and he spoke about wanting an extra man there. And obviously, it's weird, like, you know what's coming, which you don't normally know with Hard Knocks. Like, Hard Knocks is always kind of like a week-to-week thing, whereas we know exactly what's next. So it was weird that they were talking and we knew that it was Brian Burns coming up. But I don't know about you guys, Shane. One thing that kind of stood out was the fact that they kind of bypassed Nacho, and they were talking about Boogie Basham and Ryder Anderson being like the next two up. Did that surprise you?
That, I mean, I've got to be honest. I think I've seen some fans kind of reading into that, and I just think they're reading it a little bit too much into it, because you've got to remember, like you say, we're watching this knowing that we went on to acquire Brian Burns, but at the time when Shane Bowen's talking about it, he doesn't know what's going to be available. You know, and I've seen people saying on social media as well, it's quite funny when Dave said, "I'm going to offer it to Shane," and Joel Shane's like, "Shane Bowen?" Like, there was no other Shane's interviewed. Who on earth did you expect? But the one key thing I took away from that is just how important Dave's, again, seemed to prioritise that run defence. That was something that he really seemed to kind of make a point of saying to Joe Schoen, look, this is where he's at with run defence. So, that they know full well what they kind of want to do. And then, again, following on from that, I thought it was interesting the way they were kind of bouncing off each other in a way. The way Dave was like, well, Shane was like, we're going to be in a base 3-4 with 2 edge rushers. So obviously that became an emphasis and a priority for him. And then Dave's kind of bounced off him saying, okay, well, where do you see someone like Isaiah Simmons? And then he bounced where he saw Isaiah Simmons. I thought that was quite interesting to see as well.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool, to see behind the scenes of that first sort of meeting where Shane Bowen came into the room and sort of almost like said hi to everyone, and then it was like he just sort of cracked on from there onwards. It was almost like, "Hi, I'm here, down to business, let's go." And it was, it's like I said, it was quite refreshing, and it's good to hear, his plan already from day one, what he wants from that defense and what players he's looking at. Obviously, he's obviously done his research beforehand as well in terms of, who already got on the roster and who could potentially, fill in these gaps that we have, but then also looking at the other players that were potentially to bring in as well. I love that they thought they had, they even mentioned Chris Jones, and it was almost like there was never a hope in hell of Chris Jones coming over to the Giants. So, but the fact that they've covered him and essentially ruled him out because he wasn't going to be moving anywhere. But yeah, I thought the introduction of Shane Bowen was really good. I thought he came across really well, very smart, very clever, and the stats about his defense in Carolina from last season speak for themselves. I mean, God knows we need the help on defense, especially in run defense as well. So it was great to hear those stats then, and that was a big sort of factor in Dave's hiring him as DC. So yeah, it was looking good so far for Shane Bowen anyway. And then we move on and we saw the East West Shrine Bowl and Senior Bowl as well. There was only a couple of brief moments from there, but one thing I thought was quite interesting was Frank Gore, how he's like scouting running backs and looking at running backs, and the focus was made on his scouting of Devin Singletary and when he was still an active Bills player as well. So obviously he's played with Singletary, which is quite cool. And the other moment as well was when the Panthers GM Dan Morgan, who it appears is Joe Schoen's best friend, which did that work out well for us? It shows that him and Joe engage in some back and forth. I don't know if it was a bit of banter or whatever, but then obviously he then sort of mentions the whole Brian Burns, and then it was obviously it's been teased to us sort of in the last week or so, that sort of clip anyway. But it was like, hello, like he's obviously on the market, and as obviously the narrative over it said obviously that then it showed that Brian Burns is potentially on the market. And I think I said to you, Craig, as well, do you think Dan Morgan did Shane a little bit of a favour with the Burns trade? Gone, all right, we'll let you have him for this if in future we're looking for someone, you do us a little favour, because obviously they are sort of best friends. They go on holiday together. They were going on holiday together in a couple of weeks after that. But do you reckon that there's a little bit of a little backhander done there?
It's interesting, isn't it? Just because of the fact that we all know what he went for, and the first inkling that we have of a little conversation happening is, oh, do you want to send us 2 1s and then maybe a 1 and something? And Shane's turned around and he said, "Oh, now we're talking." And earlier on, you had the moment where the conversation was with Rossetti, where they were talking about Brian Burns. How much it would cost. And Chris Rossetti was kind of like, well, they wanted 2 1s, so you're probably looking at a 1 and something. I'm really looking forward to the next few episodes to actually find out how we've gone from 2-1s to 1 and something to what we actually gave up, which was a hell of a lot less than that. But I got to say, I did enjoy sort of seeing Frank Gore on there. Weird as well, considering, you know, at that time when they're filming that, they don't know we're taking Singletary. Nobody knows that we're taking Singletary for sure. It's just a chance happening that Joe Schoen's walking around, sees Frank Gore. They were together at the Bills, obviously. And then, as you said, you know, Gore scouted or was quite hot on motor coming out of college and brought it to the attention of the higher ups at the Bills. So, yeah, two just kind of like almost throwaway moments in a way. I mean, the Burns bit is a bit bigger than that, but really interesting and just added a little extra dynamic to the episode.
Shane?
Yeah, I mean, look, the conversations between around trade talks, it kind of went down exactly how I imagine it to go. Oh, do you want Burns for 2-1s? Nah, it's a little bit too rich. What about one? And all of a sudden, it's just a throwaway comment, and then all of a sudden you start spitballing ideas, and like before you know it, you've got to trade. I mean, let's not forget some of the things that was overlooked there. Joe Schoen also asked, "Do you want to maybe move up to number 6?" And they were like, "Nah, if anything, we're going to move back." And then Brandon Bean's there. Oh, what about you guys? Do you want to move up into top 10? We ain't got the ammunition. So it wasn't just a case of we were just look, you know, that's exactly how I always imagined these trades come together. You just spitball an idea out, or you say something jokingly, and then, you know, maybe I don't know if this is how it happened, but maybe as we might discover in a couple of weeks time or a couple of weeks later, pick up the phone. Yeah, so you know that chat was having about Brian Burns at the Senior Bowl. Maybe we could do something, and then all of a sudden gets the ball rolling. So kind of, you know, for me, it's exactly how I anticipated it going down. To be honest with you,
it's funny, isn't it? Because like you look at that kind of like the conversation about do you want to move up to 6 being completely overshadowed by that Brian Burns chat. Completely overshadowed.
But if we had traded number 6 away, that would have been the centre of attention.
Exactly.
Like it just gives you an idea how things kind of, you know, can just happen in this league.
And it was almost like it was kind of like such a blasé comment and sort of like just a do you want to trade up for 6? And it's like, all right. And then obviously the whole thing about the whole thing about Burns, you know, it's like it was almost like too casual.
It was probing, wasn't it? It was just probing.
Yeah.
Just
you know what?
Needs, and I'll come back and water in a few weeks' time.
Exactly, but it's great. It's great just to see that, you know, obviously the GMs know each other. Obviously, there's the whole sort of GM community. They know each other, and they obviously talk to each other more than you sort of realise. And it's just sort of cool to see sort of that side of things, like actually sort of see like in the sort of world of a GM what that sort of world looks like in that sort of period of the league season. You know, it's such a busy period of the season that it's really, I just thought it was really cool to see sort of those little snippets, and it just looks so like casual and just laid back and be like, yeah, you know, I thought it was really cool. I know we were teased a little juicy chat between Joe Schoen and Saquon with that phone call, but Shane, what do you make of what we saw so far with regards to the Saquon stuff?
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously you had the chat a lot with Shane Bowen coming in and the trade talk gathering, but the one consistency throughout this episode was it went back to Barkley. At some point, it started with Barkley. There was Barkley in the middle. There was Barkley at the end. Like it was just, you know, it was throughout the episode at different points, different kinds of conversations. And, you know, a few points that was made was every time there was a conversation about Barkley, it seemed like there were conflicting views on the Giants' identity without Barkley. You know, obviously, we saw John Mara talking to Joe Schoen. It was clear that he was angling for Barkley to return. And I understand.
He wanted him back, didn't he? He really wanted him back.
let's face facts. He was the face of the franchise. So from that perspective, you can understand why your owner will want him back. And, you know, kind of at the end, Chris Rossetti was sure someone would spend big on running back, whereas Joe Schoen thought that was unlikely. And the team that Rossetti takes as a destination, the Eagles would spend big on their defensive backfield. The camera kind of panned to Brandon Brown and Rossetti, and neither looked convinced by that. And there's also, I can't remember whose name it was. One of you two might know, but there was the guy who said, "What's our identity if we lose Saquon Barkley?" Which again, I think is a very fair point. You know, that's the big thing. At that time, you've got to remember we hadn't drafted Malik Neighbors, so we didn't know what we were potentially going to be getting in the draft. And I think it's someone. I think it might be someone to do with. Is it Mara or Tish that presented that question? I think he's something potentially to do with them, whether he's related to them or just connected with them. But I thought that was a very valid question as well. But you know, kind of the one thing that was throughout this episode was Barkley, but we never got an insight into it, so that is still all to come as well.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I think I can't remember who that wasn't mentioned that, but yeah, it was almost like they were talking about. Obviously, at first it was like we want Barkley to stay, want Barkley to stay, want Barkley to stay, and then sort of the narrative changed slightly throughout. It sort of went to they wanted him to stay, but also like he's at that stage in his career where he's 27, 28 years old, whatever it was, and sort of they fall off a cliff after that. And then it's sort of the narrative on it changed very quickly from we want him to stay to sort of going downhill a little bit, I thought. What did you reckon, Craig?
Yeah, sorry, I was just trying to see if I could find that guy. Was it Tim McDonnell, was it? Director of Player Personnel. I'm just trying to see if I can find anybody else who was on there. But no, the whole Barkley thing was obviously the big narrative. It was always going to be the big narrative. I see that AJ Brown's come out on Twitter and said that he wants to do even better to get Barkley something. I mean, I don't get why he signed with your team at the end of the day. Like, you should want to be able to do well as a team regardless without having an additional player on your books who you now want to stick it to the Giants just because he got paid. I don't get that. There's a lot of people who are giving the Giants crap over a lot of the Barkley stuff that's happening, and it's a very valid point about a lot of the sort of undertones. One thing that I said to Brian earlier when I was on the Irish NFL show talking about this exact episode was that it almost seemed to me like Joe Schoen was trying to convince the others that we didn't need Barkley. And I don't know if Joe was kind of the opinion that last year pissed him off and he didn't want to go through that again. So his idea was just to try and discount Barkley as being in the running at all and trying to get the others on his side just because he had enough of Barkley's agent and Barkley from last year and just wasn't interested in really entertaining what they had to say unless they came back to him. I don't know what your opinion is on that.
So what was that part? Sorry, I'm on the hotel Wi-Fi, so it cut out. Sorry.
I was just saying about how whether Joe Schoen's trying to convince everybody else that we don't need Barkley is because of the fact that his agent and Barkley himself maybe pissed him off last year when they were stuck. And it got to a point where he was like, well, I've given you an offer that I feel like is acceptable. You've turned it down. So this time you're going to have to come back to me.
Yeah, I mean, we've listened to and also had Chris Bisinaro on from the Giant Insider podcast, and he said himself as well, that there was times last year where Joe Schoen was kind of like, I wish you had a different agent. Essentially, he didn't actually come out and say that, but kind of the let's face facts. When you look at the deal that he got this year, he was badly advised last year by his agency, and the fact that he then changed agency this year kind of proves that point. So, I can kind of understand, but kind of the big one's going to come back to, I don't know about you guys, but I kind of got the impression, I think there was something that Joe Schoen said, I can't remember what it was, but I felt like he turned around and said something to maybe John Mara saying, well, let's Saquon walk. He'll come back to us with an offer that we can then match or counter offer.
Yeah, it was.
And then obviously there's that tease about Shane saying to Saquon something like, did he say, are you going to give us an opportunity to match it, or are you going to give us a chance? So it kind of begs the question, was there maybe a gentleman's agreement or something that maybe, you hit free agency, you come back to us, we'll see what we can do, and then we'll take it from there. But with that teaser that we've had that we've not yet seen, maybe that never actually happened.
Yeah, and I think one little sort of tidbit I picked up on as well was obviously when they mentioned about paying Daniel Jones a lot of money. It was almost a case of they were saying, well, we've paid Daniel Jones a lot of money. We can't, this is then us saying we can't afford to pay Barkley a lot of money as well. So I thought that was quite a sort of a telling comment. But Peter Joyce said that he said that he thought Shane was absolutely adamant that running backs drop after 27 years old. And was he really ever going to fight for Barkley? Should we all have seen it coming, and can we all accept that he was spot on? I mean, I don't think we've seen enough from what we saw in the first episode to really sort of understand whether Shane was ever going to really fight for him. But I think we all kind of expected, or at least thought, that Barkley would test free agency, and he did, and he got the money that he was wanting. And it just unfortunately wasn't from the Giants. But do you think that Shane's spot on that running backs do drop off after 27?
I don't think Devin Singletary is that far off 27 himself. So I think the difference is that it's age versus tread on the tires, isn't it? And I think Barkley's got both of those. That was another point he kind of made was, loads of snaps at Penn State, loads of snaps for us. All the ball's always gone through him. A lot of tread on the tires. So yeah, I kind of get it,
and injuries, to be fair, as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and injuries, and you say obviously Peter Joyce, one of our listeners, threw that in there. A lot of the comments that we got were about Barkley. Rob Manzi said that he watched it as interesting discussions around Saquon and how Joe Schoen felt that we needed to protect DJ more to utilise the offense. And then Sean Carter said, it was clear there was division around the Barkley decision. While I agree that Joe made the right call, I'm sure there'll be more to come over the next few weeks. And people may start to question the Barkley decision internally more and more, which could make an interesting dynamic for the rest of the show.
Yeah. Craig, anything else you wanted to highlight, mate?
Yeah, so there's just some other kind of musings that that I noticed that kind of don't fit into a segment, but we can sort of go through them one by one and have a quick discussion on. So at the beginning of the episode, when they were talking about running backs and they were doing the whole running back cycle, one of the things that Joe Schoen said that I thought was interesting was, we're not really going to focus on running back. We need positions, or we have other positions of need. And the first position he mentioned was cornerback, which we didn't address until the third round of the draft and didn't touch at all in free agency, really, from a number one standpoint. So I thought it was quite interesting that almost seemed at that time to be such a focus, and it dropped off at some point. I wonder if either of you have any ideas as to why, or whether we were priced out of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, and it's something we're probably going to come on to in a moment, we prioritised a bigger need, and that was offensive line. It was mentioned kind of numerous times by Joe in this opening episode that how important that position was. And I think, you look at the draft. It's not because I've had a few beers and I'm tired, but I can't remember when the first cornerback was taken. I think it was late teens, early 20s. So, there wasn't a Devon Witherspoon this year, for instance, who was taken number 5, I think it was last year, by Seattle. You know, there wasn't a top 5, top 6 cornerback.
Yeah.
So that opportunity never presented itself. And then I just think when it comes to free agency, I think the front office and Joe Schoen in particular have made their mind up that the money needs to be invested elsewhere. Like I've seen people moaning saying, "Oh, why didn't we try and sign Christian Wilkins in free agency?" Well, what would you rather have? Would you rather have a great D tackle to go along Dexy, which, yeah, okay, completely understand he's going to be useful. But then the same people are then going to bitch and moan. Oh, we've not addressed the offensive line. Well, which one do you want? Then you kind of had to pick your poison at the end of the day. And I just think that, you know, cornerback never presented itself in the first round. I think Tyler Nubin was too good a value in the second round, to be honest with you. And then I think in free agency, we just opted to spend the money in the trenches.
Yeah, it all starts up front, doesn't it? You know, on both sides of the ball. If you know the offensive line can protect the quarterback, if the defensive line can get to the opposing quarterback, you know, it almost negates the need for you know, help in the backfield. Obviously, we've addressed that position since, but yeah, I think it almost became less of a focus because, you know, there were bigger needs on the team, and they were on both lines for sure.
I mean, yeah, you're spot on, and that pretty much brings me to my next point in the terms of one of the things that he was quite hot on and was discussed quite a lot was the offensive line struggles. And I thought there were two bits that he said that were quite telling about how kind of pissed off he was about how it all came about last season. One of them saying that we had 3 practice squad players who were starters against Miami was pretty damning. You know, when Joe Schoen's job is to improve the roster year on year, and all of a sudden you've got 3 practice squad members on your offensive line, I'm sure that doesn't really sit well with him. You know, we don't shy away from a swear word on here. A little bit of blue for the dads. But I think he said you could have fucking Patrick Mahomes behind our line and he isn't winning.
Says it all, mate, doesn't it really?
Do you think he's used that as an emphasis to really hammer home how much he thought we needed the offensive line? Do you think he really believes that, or do you think it's just a case of like, well, Patrick Mahomes won the Super Bowl, let's use him as my go-to there, Shane?
I kind of feel like it's a little bit of both, and I know that's you know, the fence are not really giving an answer to the question, but I do kind of think it genuinely was a bit of both. And I mean, you know, I will say, if any of our listeners aren't particularly keen on swearing, you probably didn't enjoy that first episode, because there was a lot of that in that first episode, to be fair, a lot more than I anticipated for sure. But yeah, you know, I do think it was kind of, you know, like I say, offensive line was obviously an emphasis, and like I mentioned with my previous point, it was obviously where they wanted to spend the money in free agency. Just one thing I will just touch on with the cornerback as well. I want to say that conversation happened with Joe Schoen mentioning cornerback before they appointed Shane Bowen. So if Shane Bowen said edge, I need edge rush, I can understand in that sense as well why maybe cornerback then took a back seat. Not saying it wasn't a need, but if your defensive coordinator comes in and you say to him, what do you want? Do you want a premier edge rusher? Do you want a premier cornerback? And he says edge, then that quite clearly is the way he was going with what he was saying that we mentioned earlier on his first meeting with the brass. But, you know, at the same time, it's a tough one with the offensive line because, okay, we signed John Runyon to a decent contract. You know, we signed Illuminor to a tidy contract. But we then didn't draft an offensive lineman. So then it's, you know, you could play a little bit of, you know, good cop, bad cop, if you want to call it that, and be like, well, okay, yeah, you spent money in free agency, but then at numerous times you were in a position to potentially draft an offensive lineman. Now, why didn't you? And obviously, I'm going to be interested to see leading up to the draft, because I've heard this on Twitter. It's still going on to this day on Twitter. How serious a consideration Joe Alt potentially would have been at number 6. Now, whether we're going to get the luxury of seeing that from draft night is a different thing. But with what Joe's saying, completely get it. But we also didn't address the position in the draft. And for me, three main positions I'd look to draft every year without fail is offensive line, defensive line, or quarterback. Just because if you hit on one, you hit on them. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a stab in the dark on them kind of like, day 3 picks in particular.
True that, and also like I think as well, I personally think running back as well. If you can get a decent running back in the later rounds, what's to say in camp they might impress and end up sort of in the rotation, and then you got yourself a stud running back for next to no money. I mean, look at some of the backs we've had in the past. It kind of makes sense to pick up a late round running back, and we did last year, and we have done this year as well. So it's that's another one of those positions. What else did you have on the list, Craig, of musings?
So we've just 2 silly ones, or kind of silly ones now, that kind of showed the personality of Joe Schoen. He said that he doesn't know sports radio frequencies to the person in the car with him, so they weren't listening to anything because he blocks out the media and most importantly, sports talk radio. But that wasn't the most important thing of that little segment. Man alive, does he love a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, or a little Uncrustable as he was munching his way through? Like, man alive, yep. I did one thing that I did not expect from Hard Knocks was for Joe Schoen to talk 3 minutes about how many peanut butter and jelly sandwiches he's eaten over the years as a scout.
I mean, it was great, wasn't it? But it's just that little snippet is great to see, like sort of the personal side of him. And he loves a PB&J. What more can you say?
The thing is, he's American. Everybody knows PB&J is a go-to for an American. If you ain't got time and you need a quick bite to eat, what are you doing? PB&J. Everyone knows that.
Very true.
We've all had one, right?
Very true.
Shane, you've never dabbled in the PB&J.
Nah, mate, genuinely, I did buy some jam not too long ago, and I had the intention of doing PB&J, but to be fair, I was quite late to peanut butter in general.
Yeah, so I was, and I only had my first PB&J probably like 2 years ago. It is a game changer. Like, it is phenomenal.
It's a combination. I'm just I don't know how I feel about that.
I mean, I can't stand peanut butter, so for me it's a big no.
Yeah. See, I love it. I think it's brilliant. The texture's a bit weird.
Yeah, I do. It's on the list to try. I just need to put my big boy pants on and give it a go.
And then finally, Joe Schoen's grandma's a big Sam Hartman fan. I think the quote was, "My grandma loves him. She's like, what do you think about Hartman, Joe? He's so cute. I may be 93, but I'm not blind." I don't think Joe Schoen really likes that musing from his own grandma.
Like, oh, grandma, come on.
Yeah.
It was brilliant. I thought
I can't believe he then didn't draft him. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, he would have got grandma's approval.
Although maybe that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't want grandma rocking up at the facility all the time. Actually, here's another musing that's not on my list, but Anna brought it up to me because she watched it with me, and she turned around. She went, "How many times did you look at MetLife in the background when they were showing external shots and the American Dream Mall?" And I said, "Every time, every single time they showed it."
Yeah, that's
like, yeah. But no, I think it was all in all, it was a great first episode. Especially for us as Giants fans, like I said, we've been waiting for so long, and we never thought it was ever going to happen. The Giants being on Hard Knocks, regardless of what version it is. It's obviously this is the first ever off-season version. You then obviously got training camp and in season as well, and obviously with All or Nothing being there as well. We never thought we were going to get to see sort of this side of things. So. It's been great to see. Obviously, it's one episode in, 4 more to go, so we've got lots to look forward to. But yeah, we had a couple of followers give their thoughts. Rob Manzi said he watched it on Wednesday. Interesting discussions around Saquon and how Shane felt that we needed to protect DJ more to utilize the offense. I mean, yeah, you pay like I think the comment was you're paying Daniel Jones $40 million, it's not to hand the ball off to a $12 million running back or something like that, wasn't it? And it's like, we do need to protect Daniel Jones more as well. And then Sean Carter said, aside from it being awesome, which it was, and hoping they do an off-season one every year now, his main takeaways that Joe Schoen's the right man for the job. I don't think any of us thought anything otherwise than Joe Schoen is the right man for the job. You can tell he's a winner, and his franchise-first approach to every decision was really refreshing, given the last decade of self-serving leadership. And it was clear that there was a division around the Barkley decision. And while he agrees that Joe made the right call, I'm sure there'll be more things to come out over the next few episodes. And it's also very clear that DJ has this season, and unless it goes well, he's gone. He knows that there's the general feeling amongst the fans already, but it's nice to know that the plan is already in place. But yeah, I don't think anyone disagrees that Joe Schoen is not the right man for this job at the moment. As he said at the very beginning, he's going to do everything in his first interview. He's going to do everything in his power to make this franchise successful. And I fully believe that and fully trust in the man. So, it was a really sort of great insight, and we just can't wait to see more.
There was another comment from Martin Lomax on Facebook who said, if Shane doesn't get the results right and his draft classes don't pan out, then Chris Rossetti looks and kind of sounds almost like a potential in-house GM replacement as well. And I agree with that. I thought out of everybody who was on that show, Chris Rossetti came across very, very well.
Yeah, big time. Big time. Yeah, it's one episode down. It's in the books. If you haven't watched it yet, it will be worth the wait. I'm sure there will be some way you can watch it. If you haven't watched it yet and you want to watch it, reach out to us and we can point you in the right direction of how you can tune in and watch the first episode. But unfortunately, that is all we have time for this evening. We'll be back next week. All depends on the England result tomorrow, doesn't it, Shane? For which day we'll be streaming live next week. So keep your eyes on our socials. Looking forward to the game tomorrow, Shane?
Yeah, definitely. 6 o'clock kick-off here, I think it is. I'm probably going to be...
It'll be 6 there, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to be in the pub from about 10 or 11 a.m. Watching England get to the semi-finals. I'll still be staying here, all being well, for another week or so. But hopefully I can get on for the podcast in the week. And one thing I just want to add, I know no one's going to listen to this, but Joint Media, NFL Network, NFL Films, Dazan, sort your fucking selves out, man. Make this readily available for us UK fans, for us European fans, not even just UK. The kind of lengths that some of us have had to get to watch this episode is, let's be honest, nothing short of a joke, really. Something that's kind of, the first time it's been done, it's the Giants' 100th season. Like, come on, man, sort yourselves out. Like, make the episode readily available for European NFL fans. It's not even just Giants fans, because I know there's NFL fans that are looking forward to seeing this. And, it's passing time in the off season. So, sort yourselves out, man.
Amen to that. I understand, like, with their whole sort of HBO, they wanted to sort of premiere it, fine, cool. But then once it's aired on HBO, give it 48 hours and then make it readily available to everyone. Put it on YouTube if you, or, whatever, streaming service on DAZN, whatever it is. Exactly, Sky Sports even. But yeah, there's not been anything, and we've not heard anything from the NFL UK either. What's going on with streaming it? So it's not great. But yeah, like I said, drop us a line if you're struggling to watch it, and we'll try and point you in the right direction. Craig, anything else to add before we go?
No, just cracking episode. Looking forward to watching the next one. However, we have to try and watch it, jump through hoops to try and get that one again. No doubt Sky Sports will, or the NFL UK page will do a tweet next week saying, don't worry, UK fans, you can now watch episodes 1 and 2. Like it's like some kind of reward for us, but it's not. But yeah, episode 2 review will come as part of next week's podcast, I guess.
Yeah, I think that was the plan. So looking forward to watching episode 2, whenever that may be. It probably won't be Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, maybe Thursday, and then obviously we'll announce later in the sort of over this weekend after the England game, when we're going to be streaming live next week. My thanks as ever go to Shane and Craig for joining us, and to the listeners for tuning in. There's no viewers this week. We're signing off until next time. Let's go Giants.